9 languages? A girl like you? Maxwell Reed's laughter cut through the ballroom. Stick to carrying trays. The tech billionaire's hand struck out deliberately, knocking Jasmine Thompson's serving tray upward. Canapes splattered across her black uniform. Champagne drenched her collar. Silence rippled through nearby executives. Their eyes darted between the young black server and the infamous CEO. Jasmine's fingers trembled. Her Yale linguistics acceptance letter was still fresh in her pocket. "Sir, You were just forgetting your place." Reed's gold watch glinted as he brushed invisible dirt from his sleeve. "This is a $100 million deal with international partners. We need actual professionals, not pretenders." He turned his back on her, addressing his circle in perfect, practiced French. Jasmine's jaw tightened. In her head, she could respond in 9 different ways, each one more fluent than his. "You okay, Jay?" Carlos whispered as they restocked trays in the catering prep area. "Reed's a world-class jerk." Jasmine straightened her name tag and wiped the last champagne droplets from her collar. "I'm fine." She wasn't. At 17, Jasmine Thompson had grown accustomed to being underestimated but never humiliated like this. The daughter of a Kenyan linguistics professor, mother and African-American jazz musician father, she'd grown up surrounded by languages, culture, and the persistent message that she'd need to be exceptional just to be seen. "My last catering gig before college," she reminded herself, checking her watch. 5 more hours of this event, then back home to finalize her scholarship applications. Yale's linguistics program had accepted her early, but the financial aid package still left $15,000 uncovered. "Did you see how many countries are represented tonight?" Carlos motioned toward the ballroom. "Germany, Japan, China, Brazil. No. Reed Technologies is trying to close their biggest international deal ever." Jasmine nodded, arranging stuffed mushrooms with precise movements. Languages had always been her refuge. When classmates mocked her weird lunch or questioned if she really belonged in advanced placement courses, she'd retreat into her books' French poetry, Russian literature, Arabic script. By 14, she spoke 5 languages fluently. By 16, 9. "My mom says I have an ear," she'd explain when people expressed surprise. In reality, it was thousands of hours of dedicated study, late nights practicing tonal shifts in Mandarin, weekends volunteering as a translator at community centers. Her phone buzzed, a text from her father. "Killing it tonight, Jasmine. Your future's so bright I gotta wear shades." She smiled, her father's unwavering belief a counterweight to the Maxwell Reeds of the world. The same father who worked double shifts at the jazz club to help with her tuition, who never missed a language competition despite exhaustion. Jasmine squared her shoulders and lifted a fresh tray. Yale wasn't just her dream, it was their shared mission. Between serving rounds, Jasmine retreated to the staff bathroom. She pulled a worn flashcard set from her pocket-advanced Japanese business terminology. The summer linguistics program at Columbia had recommended business language fluency for aspiring diplomats. "Keiyaku contract," she whispered, then switched to Portuguese. "Contrato." Then German. "Vertrag." The familiar routine centered her. She'd started carrying flashcards at 12, utilizing every spare moment while classmates scrolled social media. Her goal, the UN translation course, required mastery beyond casual conversation. 2 minutes, Thompson." The catering manager's voice interrupted her practice. Back in the service area, she overheard 2 event coordinators in panic mode. The translation service canceled. "All 9 delegates arriving, and Reed's going to murder someone," the woman in a headset hissed. "Can't we use translation apps?" her colleague suggested. "For $100 million? Are you insane?" Jasmine's pulse quickened as she loaded her tray. She understood exactly what was at stake. Last summer's internship at the International Business Council had taught her how critical direct communication was in high-level negotiations. Near the dessert station, she paused, watching Reed demonstrating his company's new technology to a German investor. His German was textbook perfect, but culturally tone-deaf. The businessman's subtle wince at Reed's overly familiar language didn't match his polite smile. Classic mistake, Jasmine thought. In formal German business settings, premature familiarity signaled disrespect, not friendliness. She'd studied such cultural nuances extensively, understanding that language wasn't just words, it was cultural context, power dynamics, history. The investor nodded mechanically, his interest visibly cooling. Reed, oblivious to his misstep, continued his rehearsed pitch, missing the signals entirely. "Remember what I told you all." Sandra, the catering manager, gathered her staff before the main event. "Tonight is about being invisible. These people are closing major international deals. They want their drinks refreshed without noticing you exist." Her eyes lingered on Jasmine. "Especially you, Thompson. After that incident with Reed, stay completely out of his sight." The warning was unnecessary. Jasmine had perfected invisibility long ago in honors classes, where teachers overlooked her raised hand, in school hallways where security guards checked her ID while white students walked past unchallenged. "Like ghosts," Sandra continued. "They shouldn't register your presence." As the team dispersed, Jasmine moved to her station near the Japanese delegation's table. The executives spoke freely around her in their native language, assuming no one would understand. "Reed-san is overconfident," one said in Japanese. "His numbers don't match what our analysis shows." "The technology is impressive," another replied. "But the licensing terms are problematic. If we can't modify for our market—" Jasmine maintained her neutral expression, not reacting to information that could make or break the deal. At the next table, Arabic executives expressed similar concerns about export restrictions. The Brazilian team nearby debated market penetration timelines in rapid Portuguese. A white server named Tyler nudged her. "Must be weird, huh?" "All this gibberish?" Jasmine smiled tightly. "Just background noise." But it wasn't. It was a symphony she understood perfectly. Every note, every theme, every discordant concern that Reed's team was missing completely. Information worth millions flowing freely around her because no one imagined the black girl with the serving tray could possibly understand. The ultimate invisibility. The hotel ballroom transformed as evening deepened. Wait staff removed dinner settings while technicians set up for Reed's formal presentation. Jasmine circulated with coffee service, mentally mapping the delegations around the room. The Japanese team, cautious, detail-oriented, concerned about customization rights. The German investors, uncomfortable with Reed's overly casual approach, looking for long-term stability guarantees. The Russian contingent skeptical about data security claims. The Brazilian, Saudi, Chinese, French, Spanish, and Swahili-speaking Kenyan representatives, each with specific concerns Jasmine had gleaned from their conversations. Reed stood at the center, his confidence radiating as he directed his team. "Once this deal closes, Reed Technologies dominates 9 major markets. Nothing can stop us." His assistant approached nervously. "Sir, we have a situation with translations." "What situation?" "We booked the best service months ago. They just called. Their team had a major transit issue flight canceled in Frankfurt. They won't make it tonight." Reed's smile hardened. "The most important presentation of the year and we have no translators?" "We've called every agency in the city." Nothing on such short notice. Jasmine slowed her movements, absorbing the crisis unfolding. The delegates had flown in specifically for this event. Rescheduling would mean losing momentum, possibly the entire deal. "Translation apps?" Reed demanded. His tech officer winced. "Too imprecise for technical specifications and legal terms. We'd risk major misunderstandings." "Find me a solution in 30 minutes or find new jobs." Reed's voice was deadly calm. "This deal closes tonight." The team scattered, making frantic calls. From across the room, Jasmine caught Carlos's knowing look. They both recognized the irony. The solution was already here, invisible in plain sight. Jasmine slipped into the service corridor, heart pounding. Through the kitchen's swinging doors, she could hear Reed's team scrambling. Harvard's language department? Columbia? NYU? There has to be someone. It's Friday night. We need 9 languages simultaneously. Jasmine leaned against the wall, conflicted. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. Your gift with languages isn't just for you, Jasmine. It's to build bridges where others see only walls. But her practical side countered. This job paid tuition money. Stepping forward meant risking not just tonight's wages, but future referrals. Sandra had been clear in visibility, was job security. Through the kitchen window, she watched Reed pacing, barking orders into his phone. The same man who'd humiliated her hours earlier now faced his own crisis, one she could solve with a single sentence. The Japanese delegation consulted their watches. The Germans exchanged concerned glances. The Kenyan representatives began gathering their materials, clearly preparing for an early exit. $100 million deal collapsing because the black girl with the answers had been told to stay invisible. Carlos appeared beside her. You know all those languages they need, don't you? Jasmine didn't respond. I've heard you practicing. 9 languages, right? Just like they need. She met his eyes. And get fired for speaking out of turn? Jasmine retreated to the staff room, removing her tray. 10 minutes remained on her break. 10 minutes to decide. Her phone buzzed with a text from Yale's financial aid office. Deadline for supplemental scholarship application, Monday. Without additional aid, your acceptance will be released to waitlisted students. The timing couldn't be more pointed. Step forward and risk this job, or stay silent and watch her college dreams fade. She opened her family chat. A photo from her father, him at the jazz club, saxophone in hand, captioned, "Playing extra set tonight." Tuition fund. A message from her mother. Remember what I always tell you about your gifts? Jasmine did remember. Her mother, who'd left a prestigious university position in Nairobi to marry an American musician, had faced her own battles with prejudice and underestimation. Never hide your light because others find it blinding, she'd say. That's their problem, not yours. But real life wasn't an inspirational poster. Real life had consequences. Through the door, she heard Reed's increasingly desperate negotiations. We can do English only. Surely everyone speaks, followed by firm objections in various languages. Jasmine closed her eyes, weighing options. Best case, she saves the day, becomes the hero. Worst case, she's humiliated again, fired, blacklisted from the catering circuit that paid her bills. The most likely outcome lay somewhere between momentary recognition, followed by convenient forgetting of the black girl who'd stepped out of her proper place. Her break timer chimed. Decision time. Carlos appeared in the doorway. They're leaving, Jay. The Japanese delegation just called for their car. Jasmine stood, straightening her uniform. Sometimes you have to risk being seen to avoid disappearing completely. Jasmine approached the event coordinator, a harried woman named Diane, clutching multiple phones and a tablet. 3 different languages echoed from the devices as agencies declined the last-minute request. Excuse me, Jasmine said. I might be able to help with the translation issue. Diane barely glanced up. We've got it covered, thanks. But I said we've got it. Diane's tone sharpened. Unless you're suddenly a certified multilingual translator instead of a catering server, please return to your assigned duties. Jasmine held her ground. I actually speak all 9 languages you need, fluently. This earned her a dismissive once-over. Right, and I'm the Queen of England. Look, we're in crisis mode here. I don't have time for jokes. It's not a joke. I can demonstrate. Do you understand what's at stake? Diane's voice rose. This is $100 million international technology deal, not a high school Spanish test. These are CEOs and government officials with technical specifications and legal requirements. A few heads turned their way. Jasmine felt her resolve wavering under the scrutiny. "I've studied business language specifically," she persisted, quieter now. "I can handle the terminology." Diane set down her devices, facing Jasmine directly. "Let me be crystal clear. Even if you somehow magically spoke 9 languages which you don't know one is going to trust critical negotiations to a teenage server. Now, unless you want me speaking with your manager, I suggest you get back to coffee service." The dismissal stung worse than Reed's earlier shove. Not just rejection, but the absolute certainty that someone like her couldn't possibly possess such abilities. Jasmine retreated, cheeks burning. Near the exit, she passed the Japanese delegation leader speaking with his assistant. "We cannot proceed without proper translation," he said in Japanese. "The technical specifications have too many potential pitfalls." His assistant nodded. "I've called for the car. We'll reconsider after they've solved their communication issues." Jasmine continued walking, her invisible talents walking right out the door with them. The atmosphere in the ballroom shifted from anticipatory to tense. Delegation members checked phones and whispered among themselves as Reed's team scrambled unsuccessfully for solutions. "Translation apps on tablets at each table?" Reed's tech officer suggested desperately. "We tested those," his assistant replied. "The financial terms translate incorrectly in 3 languages, and the technical specifications are gibberish in Japanese." Jasmine circulated with fresh coffee, observing the unraveling situation. The Brazilian delegates consulted flight schedules. The Saudi representatives made calls regarding hotel extensions. No one wanted the translated presentation materials hastily prepared through software. "Perhaps we reschedule," suggested the German investor in heavily accented English. "When proper translators are available." Reed's smile remained fixed, but his knuckles whitened around his tablet. "Unavoidable delays mean our competitors could move first. We'd all lose significant market advantage." The French delegation leader responded in rapid French, clearly expressing frustration that Jasmine understood perfectly. "This level of disorganization makes us question the entire partnership. If basic communication wasn't arranged properly, what else has been overlooked?" Reed nodded as though he understood, though Jasmine caught his subtle glance toward a translation app that had only captured half the statement correctly. The Chinese representatives spoke among themselves in Mandarin. "Without proper translation, we cannot verify the technical claims. The risk is too high." Jasmine refilled their cups, maintaining her neutral expression despite understanding every word. The misunderstandings were multiplying. Reed's team was missing crucial concerns that could be addressed if only they knew about them. Her phone vibrated another message from Yale's financial aid office. "Please confirm your scholarship interview Monday. Without completion, your acceptance status will be in jeopardy." The timing couldn't be more pointed. This catering job's pay would barely cover textbooks, but losing Yale would derail her entire future. Carlos passed her with an empty tray. "They're all leaving, starting with the Japanese and Germans." "You really gonna let this happen?" Jasmine watched Reed making increasingly desperate promises in fractured phrases while delegates exchanged skeptical glances. "Sometimes the biggest risk is taking no risk at all," Carlos added. "This is completely unacceptable." Reed's voice carried across the ballroom as the Japanese delegation formally stood to leave. "We've invested months in this partnership." The lead Japanese investor bowed slightly. "Hishimoto Industries values precision in communication. Without it, we cannot proceed." His English was careful but limited. Reed turned to his team. "Get me anything that can translate properly. There are $9 billion at stake." The desperation in his voice was palpable. For the first time, Jasmine saw beyond Reed's arrogance to the very human fear beneath. Jobs, futures, opportunities all balanced on this moment. She moved to clear glasses from the Brazilian delegation's table. They spoke rapidly in Portuguese about catching earlier flights. "A shame," one said in her native language. "The technology itself seems promising." "But the communication barriers are too significant," her colleague replied. "If we misunderstand licensing terms now, imagine the problems later." Jasmine hesitated, then spoke softly in perfect Portuguese. "The licensing terms are actually quite flexible." Both executives froze, staring at her. "I'm sorry," she continued in Portuguese. "I couldn't help overhearing your concerns." Before they could respond, she moved quickly to the next table, heart pounding. Had she just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed? Carlos appeared at her side. "What did you just do?" "Something stupid, probably." He gripped her arm. "Listen to me. My cousin works for Reed. If this deal falls apart, they're cutting 200 jobs. Real people with families." Jasmine looked around the room, at Reed's increasingly desperate negotiations, at the departing delegates, at Sandra watching her suspiciously from across the room. "You have a gift," Carlos said. "Are you really going to hide it because you're afraid of what looking foolish? Getting fired from a catering job?" The Japanese delegation reached the door. The Germans were gathering their materials. The momentum of failure was becoming unstoppable. Sandra approached, eyes narrowed. "Thompson, what are you doing? Back to your station now." Jasmine took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, but I can't." She set down her tray and walked directly toward the center of the room. The Japanese delegation leader had reached the ballroom doors when Jasmine stepped into the open space between the departing guests and Reed's team. "Hishimoto-san," she called clearly in flawless Japanese. "Please allow me to explain the misunderstanding regarding the API licensing structure." The executive stopped, turning slowly with undisguised surprise. Every eye in the room shifted to the young black woman in catering uniform, suddenly speaking business-level Japanese. "The integration flexibility is actually built into the core architecture," Jasmine continued in Japanese. "The translation error suggested restrictions that don't exist in the actual agreement." Hishimoto approached cautiously. "You understand our concerns about market adaptation?" "Completely," Jasmine responded, still in perfect Japanese. "The documentation incorrectly translated open-source components as fixed architecture elements. The customization your Tokyo development team requires is fully supported." The room had fallen silent. Reed stood frozen, his expression cycling rapidly between confusion, disbelief, and calculation. Hishimoto studied Jasmine carefully. "You work for Reed Technologies?" "No, sir," she answered honestly. "I'm working catering tonight." "But I understand what's being lost in translation here." She switched seamlessly to English. "Mr. Reed, Hishimoto Industries' primary concern is whether they can adapt your software for Japanese business culture without restriction. Your materials suggested they cannot, but that's incorrect, isn't it?" Reed stared at her, momentarily speechless, before his business instincts took over. "Absolutely incorrect. Complete customization is a core selling point." Jasmine turned back to Hishimoto, relaying this in Japanese with precise technical terminology. The executive's expression shifted noticeably. "You speak our language very well," he commented. "Where did you study?" "Self-taught initially, then formal study," she replied. "I also speak Mandarin, if you'd prefer to include your Chinese partners in this clarification." Without waiting for permission, she turned to the Chinese delegation and addressed them in perfect Mandarin, explaining the same misunderstanding from their perspective. The Chinese officials exchanged glances, clearly reassessing the situation and the young woman at its center. Sandra appeared at Jasmine's elbow, hissing, "What do you think you're doing?" Before she could answer, Hishimoto spoke. "We would like her to continue. Please." Reed recovered quickly, professional smile clicking into place as he assessed this unexpected development. "Miss..." He raised an eyebrow at Jasmine. "Thompson. Jasmine Thompson." Miss Thompson apparently has some language skills, Reed announced to the room, tone carefully calibrated between amusement and opportunity. Perhaps she can assist while we await professional translators. The condescension was subtle but unmistakable. This was damage control, not recognition. I'd be happy to help, Jasmine replied evenly, then added in perfect Mandarin to the Chinese delegation. The security protocols were also mistranslated. Your concerns about data sovereignty are addressed in Section 4, which guarantees local storage. The Chinese delegates leaned forward with renewed interest, responding rapidly in their native language. Jasmine kept pace effortlessly, explaining technical details with appropriate business terminology. Reed watched, his expression tightening as he realized Jasmine wasn't just speaking phrases, she was discussing complex technology specifications and legal nuances with confidence. Perhaps we should return to our seats, Hishimoto suggested, motioning to his team. Reed seized the moment. Excellent. Let's restart the presentation properly. He turned to Jasmine, lowering his voice. This is unexpected. How many languages do you actually speak? 9, she replied. All the ones you need tonight. His eyebrows rose. 9? That's impossible. No one. Japanese, Mandarin, German, French, Portuguese, Spanish, Arabic, Russian, and Swahili, she listed calmly. Reed's assistants exchanged skeptical glances. One whispered, She's probably memorized a few phrases in each. No way she's fluent. The Saudi delegate approached, addressing Jasmine directly in rapid Arabic. Without hesitation, she responded, discussing specific technical questions about database architecture that had been mistranslated in their materials. The delegate nodded with satisfaction, then switched to testing her with regional dialectal variations. Jasmine adjusted seamlessly, even noting appropriate cultural business etiquette in her responses. Reed's skepticism visibly wavered. We should continue, Jasmine suggested professionally. Everyone's time is valuable. Reed studied her for a long moment, calculation clear in his eyes. Finally, he gestured toward the presentation area. By all means, Miss Thompson, show us what you can do. As the delegates returned to their seats, excited murmurs rippled through the room. Reed guided Jasmine toward the presentation area, his grip on her elbow just slightly too tight. Let me be clear, he said under his breath. If you embarrass my company with half-baked language skills, there will be consequences. Jasmine maintained her composure. I understand the stakes, Mr. Reed. Do you? This is a $9 billion multinational deal, not a school project. His tech officer approached with the presentation materials. Sir, should we proceed with the full technical demonstration? Reed studied Jasmine skeptically. She claims to speak 9 languages, fluently. Forgive my doubts, but that's extraordinarily unlikely, especially from someone... He didn't finish the sentence, but his implication hung in the air. Someone like me? Jasmine supplied calmly. Reed's expression hardened. Someone without formal credentials. What exactly qualifies you to handle international business negotiations? I've studied each language for years, Jasmine explained. My mother is a linguistics professor. I've completed advanced certification in... Anyone can claim anything, Reed interrupted. Memorizing a few phrases isn't fluency. The Brazilian executive who had overheard Jasmine earlier stepped forward. Her Portuguese was perfect, not just pronunciation, but technical vocabulary. And her Japanese includes proper business honorifics, added Hishimoto. Reed remained unconvinced. Perhaps she prepared a few key languages for this specific opportunity. The implication of calculated deception was clear. If you prefer to continue without my help, Jasmine offered, I'll return to my catering duties. The delegates exchanged glances. The Kenyan representative spoke up in Swahili. We've waited months for this partnership. If she can facilitate clear communication, why hesitate? Jasmine responded in flawless Swahili, surprising him. Reed watched this exchange, jaw tightening. Fine. We'll proceed. but I want verification of each translation in real time. Reed reconfigured the presentation, his initial relief at finding a translator clearly battling with suspicion about Jasmine's abilities. The delegates arranged themselves around the conference table, attention split between the presentation materials and the unexpected young translator. "We'll begin with general terms," Reed announced, "then move to technical specifications for each market. Miss Thompson will translate, and I'd like each delegation to verify accuracy." The challenge was obvious. He expected her to fail. Reed launched into his presentation, deliberately accelerating his speech and using complex business terminology. When he paused for Jasmine to translate into Japanese, his expression clearly anticipated hesitation or confusion. Instead, she rendered his points fluently, maintaining his key emphases while adjusting for Japanese business communication norms, more precise, less promotional than American style. Hashimoto nodded approval. "Accurate and clear." Reed's eyes narrowed. He switched to technical specifications, describing proprietary algorithms with specialized vocabulary. Again, Jasmine translated smoothly into Japanese, then Mandarin, then German. The German investor commented, "Her business German is excellent. Frankfurt dialect, very precise." Reed introduced increasingly obscure technical terminology. When Jasmine translated complex encryption protocols into Arabic without hesitation, the Saudi delegation exchanged impressed glances. "Perhaps we should proceed to specific questions," the Saudi representative suggested. "Our technical team had concerns about implementation timelines." Reed hesitated, clearly recalculating. The delegates were engaging directly with Jasmine now, bypassing his carefully planned presentation structure. "I'd prefer we complete the overview first," he countered. The French delegate spoke rapidly in his native language, a complex question about API integration that Jasmine translated perfectly. "He's asking about third-party integration limitations," she explained to Reed, "specifically whether the architecture allows for custom modules without compromising security protocols." Reed blinked, caught off guard by both the question and her seamless handling of it. "That's correct," he admitted. "The architecture does support that flexibility." As Jasmine translated his response, the delegates leaned forward with renewed interest, asking follow-up questions in their respective languages, questions that had been suppressed by previous communication barriers. Reed watched his carefully structured presentation disintegrating into a multilingual technical discussion that Jasmine navigated with unexpected authority. His expression hardened from skepticism to something closer to alarm. As the technical discussion deepened, Jasmine found herself at the center of a complex multilingual negotiation. The delegates addressed questions directly to her, trusting her translations more than the prepared materials. Reed observed this shift in dynamics with increasing tension. During a brief pause as documents were distributed, he pulled Jasmine aside. "Quite the performance," he said, voice low. "Where exactly did a catering server learn international business language at this level?" "I've studied languages since childhood," Jasmine replied evenly. "My mother is—" "Let me guess," Reed interrupted. "Your mother is a linguistics professor and your father is a diplomat? A surprisingly convenient background." His skepticism had hardened into something more pointed. "My mother is a linguistics professor," Jasmine confirmed. "My father is a musician." "And somehow on those salaries, you've mastered 9 languages to business proficiency?" Reed's voice dripped disbelief. "Who's coaching you through an earpiece? Which competitor sent you?" The accusation stunned her. "No one is coaching me, Mr. Reed." He stepped closer. "No teenager masters business Japanese, Arabic, and Russian simultaneously without institutional backing. Which company are you really working for?" The German delegate approached with a contract question, interrupting their exchange. Jasmine answered in flawless German, explaining a nuanced legal term. When the delegate departed, Reed continued, loud enough for nearby executives to hear. I find it difficult to believe someone with your background would have access to this level of education without significant backing. The implication was clear: her race and apparent economic status made her abilities suspicious rather than impressive. My background? Jasmine kept her voice steady despite the heat rising to her face. A young person serving catering suddenly claims world-class language abilities? It doesn't add up. Reed addressed the room now, voice carrying. I'm concerned about potential corporate espionage. These negotiations involve proprietary technology. The accusation hung in the air. Several delegates exchanged uncomfortable glances. Jasmine felt her momentary acceptance slipping away, replaced by familiar suspicion. Once again, her abilities weren't being celebrated. They were being treated as threatening, implausible, or fraudulent. I'm simply a student who speaks multiple languages, she stated firmly. Nothing more. Reed's expression said clearly he didn't believe her for a second. The tension escalated as Reed pulled his legal counsel aside, speaking in urgent whispers while glancing repeatedly toward Jasmine. The delegates watched this development with growing concern. Is there a problem? Hishimoto asked in Japanese. Jasmine translated the question, maintaining her professional demeanor despite the situation unraveling around her. Reed returned, his decision apparently made. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption. In the interest of protecting all parties' intellectual property, we'll pause until our contracted translation service arrives tomorrow. Protests erupted in multiple languages. The Saudi delegation checked flight schedules on their phones. The Brazilian representatives began gathering their materials. This is unacceptable, the French executive declared in his native language. We've finally begun making real progress. Jasmine translated faithfully, even as Reed's expression darkened. Miss Thompson, Reed announced, thank you for your assistance, but we'll continue with professional translators tomorrow. Please return to your catering duties. The dismissal was unambiguous. Sandra appeared at the door, clearly summoned to remove her. Jasmine felt the familiar pressure to comply, to become invisible again. But something had shifted inside her. The delegates had heard her, really heard her, and recognized her abilities without qualification. With respect, Mr. Reed, she responded clearly, the delegates have questions that need answering now. Postponing means potentially losing this partnership. Reed stepped closer, voice lowered to a threatening whisper. You're a server who's disrupted a billion-dollar negotiation. Return to your post or be escorted out. The Kenyan representative stood. If she leaves, we leave. We've waited months for clear communication. Agreed, said the Japanese delegation leader. We finally understand the technical specifications correctly. Other delegates nodded, creating a unified front. Reed found himself cornered. Proceed with the untested teenager or lose the entire deal. His face flushed with barely controlled anger. This is highly irregular. So is dismissing the only person making communication possible, the German investor noted dryly. Reed's assistant whispered urgently in his ear, likely explaining the financial implications of the delegates walking out. After a tense moment, Reed forced a tight smile. Let's continue then. Miss Thompson will translate while we await professional verification tomorrow. The condescension in his voice was unmistakable. This wasn't acceptance. It was temporary tolerance under duress. Jasmine nodded professionally. Thank you, Mr. Reed. Shall we continue with the licensing terms? The negotiations intensified over the next hour. With communication barriers removed, delegates raised complex questions that had been suppressed by translation difficulties. Jasmine found herself simultaneously interpreting technical specifications, legal clauses, and cultural business norms across all 9 languages. The Russian delegation is concerned about data sovereignty requirements, she explained to Reed after a rapid exchange in Russian. Their new legislation requires all user data to remain on servers within their borders. Reed nodded, answering while closely watching her translation for any sign of faltering. Our architecture supports regional data isolation. We can guarantee compliance. Jasmine rendered this into perfect Russian, adding appropriate formal business phrasing that visibly impressed the delegation leader. As discussions continued, she switched effortlessly between languages, Japanese to Portuguese to Arabic to German, maintaining precise technical vocabulary in each. When the Chinese delegation raised concerns about encryption standards, she translated complex cryptographic terms without hesitation. The meeting's pace accelerated dramatically. Issues that had been communication roadblocks for months resolved in minutes. The delegates increasingly directed their questions through Jasmine rather than Reed's team, recognizing her accuracy exceeded the prepared materials. Reed watched this transformation with a complex expression, professional satisfaction at the deal's progress, battling visible discomfort at Jasmine's central role. When the Saudi delegation introduced region-specific regulatory requirements, Jasmine not only translated the technical language, but added contextual clarity. They're referring to the GCC Unified Data Protection Framework that took effect last month. The Saudi representatives nodded appreciatively at this understanding of their regulatory environment. The French delegation raised intricate questions about API integration with European systems. Without missing a beat, Jasmine translated technical specifications that hadn't been included in the presentation materials. "How did you know that detail?" Reed asked quietly during a document review pause. "I studied your company's technical documentation online while preparing for a business language certification," she explained. "The public developer forums covered these specifications." Reed's skepticism visibly wavered. No coaching or corporate espionage could explain the depth and breadth of knowledge Jasmine demonstrated across such diverse technical and cultural domains. For the first time, he seemed to consider that her abilities might be genuine. 3 hours into the negotiations, a critical impasse emerged. The Japanese and Chinese delegations disagreed fundamentally on data-sharing protocols, each citing regional regulatory requirements that seemed mutually exclusive. "This is a deal-breaker," Hishimoto stated flatly in Japanese. "We cannot compromise on user privacy frameworks." The Chinese delegation leader responded firmly in Mandarin, insisting their position was equally non-negotiable. Reed's team looked bewildered as the atmosphere shifted from productive to contentious. "What's happening?" Reed demanded. Jasmine translated both positions, then hesitated, analyzing the technical specifications herself. "Mr. Reed, I believe there's a misunderstanding about terminology. They're using different terms for the same technical approach." "Explain," Reed demanded, tension evident. "In Japanese business language, data sovereignty emphasizes user consent protocols. In Mandarin business context, data integrity boundaries focuses on storage location," Jasmine clarified. "They're actually seeking the same outcome through different compliance frameworks." She turned to both delegations, explaining in their respective languages how Reed's technology could satisfy both requirements simultaneously through a feature called Regionally Adaptive Compliance Modules, a capability buried in the technical documentation but not highlighted in any presentations. "Is this accurate?" Reed asked his chief technical officer, who frantically reviewed specifications on his tablet. "Actually, yes," the CTO confirmed, surprised. "It's a new feature in version 4.2 that allows simultaneous compliance with multiple regulatory frameworks." How did she know this? Jasmine addressed both delegations directly, first in Japanese, then Mandarin, explaining the technical solution in precise detail. She drew a simple diagram on a nearby tablet, illustrating how data could flow through regional compliance gateways while maintaining both Japanese and Chinese regulatory requirements. The atmosphere in this room transformed. Both delegation leaders studied the diagram, asking technical follow-up questions that Jasmine translated and answered with remarkable clarity. "This solution satisfies our requirements," the Chinese representative finally confirmed. "And ours as well," Hishimoto agreed. Reed watched this exchange with undisguised amazement. His billion-dollar deal had nearly collapsed over a terminology misunderstanding that his entire team had missed, yet was immediately clear to the teenage caterer he'd dismissed hours earlier. When the Kenyan delegation raised concerns about implementation costs for smaller markets, Jasmine smoothly explained a tiered pricing structure mentioned in Reed's earlier interviews, but not included in the formal materials. The scaled implementation model actually benefits emerging markets, she translated for Reed. They're asking if you'll confirm the preferential rates for developing economies. Reed nodded, still processing what was happening. Yes, absolutely. That's always been part of our global strategy. As Jasmine conveyed this in Swahili, adding culturally appropriate business reassurances, the Kenyan delegates visibly relaxed. One by one, the major obstacles that had threatened the deal dissolved through clear communication. Technical specifications were verified, cultural misunderstandings clarified, and regulatory concerns addressed, all flowing through Jasmine's precise translations. The Saudi delegation leader leaned toward his colleague, whispering in Arabic, "I've worked with professional translators for 20 years and never encountered this level of precision." Jasmine pretended not to hear the compliment as she focused on the Brazilian delegation's questions about implementation timelines. As the final technical details were resolved, Reed called for a brief recess. The delegates dispersed for refreshments, conversing animatedly in their native languages about the unexpected breakthrough. Reed approached Jasmine, his earlier hostility replaced by undisguised reassessment. "That feature you identified, the regional compliance modules, it wasn't in any of our presentation materials. I read about it in your developer documentation," Jasmine explained. "When studying business language, I use real technical specifications for context." Reed shook his head slightly. "Our own translation team missed that terminology discrepancy for months." The admission clearly cost him something. His gaze shifted from skepticism to cautious respect, the look of someone recalculating a fundamental equation. 9 languages, he said quietly. Actually fluent. Not just conversational, but technical, legal, and cultural fluency. Jasmine nodded. "Yes. Where did you learn all this?" Truthfully. "I told you my mother is a linguistics professor. I've studied languages since I was 5. I practice constantly, using business and technical materials because that's what professional translators need to master." Reed's expression continued its transformation from dismissal to doubt to dawning recognition of something extraordinary. "Earlier today, I told you to stick to serving drinks," he said, voice lowered. "That was a mistake," Jasmine supplied calmly. Reed nodded slowly. "Yes, clearly." As the meeting reconvened, a subtle but significant shift had occurred. The delegates addressed their questions directly to Jasmine rather than through Reed. Her role had evolved from emergency translator to trusted communication hub. Hishimoto approached during document review, speaking in Japanese. "Thompson-san, your language abilities are extraordinary. Where did you receive your training?" Jasmine explained her background in Japanese, mentioning her academic pursuits and aspirations for diplomatic translation work. "You're still a student." Hishimoto seemed surprised. "Your business Japanese exceeds many professional translators I've worked with." Similar conversations occurred with other delegation leaders. The Saudi representative inquired about her Arabic studies. The Russian team commented on her perfect handling of technical terminology. The Brazilian executive asked if she had lived in Sao Paulo, given her flawless Portuguese accent. These interactions didn't escape Reed's notice. He watched as Jasmine, the server he'd physically shoved aside hours earlier, commanded genuine respect from international business leaders worth billions. When the Chinese delegation leader formally requested her business card, Jasmine smiled apologetically. "I'm just working catering tonight. I don't have cards." The executive looked confused. "But you're not with Reed Technologies?" "No, sir. I'm a student saving for college." This exchange rippled through the delegations, transforming their perception further. Not a professional translator, not a corporate representative, just a remarkably talented young woman who happened to be passing through. The Kenyan representative approached Reed directly. "Your translator is exceptional. You must value her greatly." Reed's hesitation spoke volumes. "She's actually not. That is, she's just helping us tonight." "Just helping?" The executive raised his eyebrows. "Such talent should be cultivated, not serving canapes." Reed nodded slowly, his perspective visibly continuing to shift. As the meeting progressed toward successful conclusion, Reed's team members began approaching Jasmine during document exchanges. "That was incredible," whispered his marketing director. "You saved this entire deal." His technical officer added, "The way you explained the API architecture in multiple languages, I couldn't do that in English." Even the event coordinator who had dismissed her earlier stopped by. "I owe you an apology. When you offered to help, I just assumed—" "It's okay," Jasmine assured her. "People often do." From across the room, she noticed Sandra watching with an unreadable expression. Other catering staff had paused their duties, observing the transformation of their colleague from invisible server to central figure. Carlos caught her eye, giving a subtle thumbs up. The pride in his expression meant more than all the executive acknowledgments combined. Reed's legal counsel approached, offering a surprising admission. "We've spent thousands on translation services that missed nuances you caught immediately. How did you become so proficient?" "Practice," Jasmine answered simply. "Every day, every language, for years." "That's dedication most people don't possess," the woman noted. As the meeting concluded with handshakes and relieved smiles, Jasmine felt a weight lifting. For once, her abilities weren't being questioned or doubted. They were being recognized without qualification. Visibility, after a lifetime of being overlooked, felt strangely unfamiliar but undeniably right. The formal signing ceremony concluded with enthusiastic handshakes. 9 delegation leaders and Reed stood for photos, the tension of earlier replaced by genuine celebration. A $9 billion multinational deal had been secured. As the delegates prepared to depart, Hishimoto approached Jasmine once more. "Thompson-san, my company is always seeking multilingual talent. When you complete your studies, please contact me." He handed her his business card with a respectful bow. Other delegation leaders followed suit, pressing cards into her hands with similar offers. The Saudi executive mentioned their diplomatic corps connections. The Brazilian representative suggested internship possibilities. Reed observed this procession with a complex expression. When the delegates had departed, he gestured Jasmine to a quiet corner of the now emptying ballroom. "So," he began, visibly recalibrating his approach. "Yale linguistics program?" Jasmine nodded, surprised he'd remembered this detail. "Full scholarship?" "Partial," she corrected. "I'm still working to cover the gap." Reed considered this. "Our company has an educational support program for promising talent. Full tuition, stipend, guaranteed internship breaks." Jasmine blinked, processing his words. "Are you offering—" "A position," Reed confirmed. "International Relations Division. We clearly need someone with your skills." The offer hung between them, unexpected, life-changing, and complexly motivated. "Earlier today, you physically pushed me aside," Jasmine noted quietly. "You said I should stick to serving drinks." Reed had the grace to look uncomfortable. "I was wrong. Spectacularly wrong. Because you discovered I have value." "Because I made assumptions I shouldn't have," he admitted. "Talent comes in packages we don't always recognize." Jasmine considered his words, weighing sincerity against opportunity. "I'd need the details in writing," she said finally, "including educational support and role expectations." Reed nodded, extending his hand. "Welcome to Reed Technologies, Miss Thompson." She accepted the handshake, recognizing both victory and responsibility in the moment. 6 months later, Jasmine sat at a conference table in Reed Technologies' international headquarters. Her Yale acceptance letter had been framed by her parents, proudly displayed alongside her new business cards. Jasmine Thompson, International Relations Liaison. The educational support program covered her full tuition while allowing her to work remotely during school terms. Her first project creating culturally appropriate translations of Reed's technical documentation had already improved international client relationships. As executives filed in for the quarterly review, Jasmine nodded to Carlos's cousin, now heading the development team for emerging markets, a division that had expanded rather than facing the layoffs once feared. Reed entered last, acknowledging her with genuine respect, a transformation more significant than her job title. He'd become an unexpected advocate, highlighting her contributions in company communications and industry panels. When a new catering server entered with coffee service, Jasmine made deliberate eye contact, thanking him by name. She'd insisted that staff name tags become standard protocol, a small but meaningful change. "Before we begin," Reed announced, "I'd like to acknowledge Jasmine's work on our international communication protocols. Our client satisfaction metrics have increased 43% since implementation." The room applauded briefly. Jasmine accepted the recognition with a calm smile, remembering the girl who once hid flashcards between serving trays, afraid to be seen practicing languages. That invisibility was firmly behind her. As the meeting concluded, Reed asked Jasmine to stay behind. Through the glass walls, they watched executives dispersing, conversing in multiple languages now accommodated throughout the company's operations. "I received an interesting call today," Reed mentioned. "The International Youth Linguistics Association wants you to keynote their conference." Jasmine raised her eyebrows. "That's unexpected." "Is it? You're becoming quite the role model, the girl who spoke 9 languages and changed a company's entire approach to global communication." She smiled, and saved a $9 billion deal in the process. "There's that too," Reed acknowledged with a wry smile. "Though I maintain I would have figured something out eventually." "Eventually might have been too late," she noted. Reed nodded, suddenly serious. "How many others are out there, do you think? People with extraordinary abilities being overlooked because they don't fit our expectations of what excellence looks like?" Jasmine considered the question. "Probably more than we can imagine." "That's what keeps me up at night now," Reed admitted. "Who else am I not seeing?" Jasmine gathered her materials, preparing to leave. "The real question isn't who you might be overlooking. It's why we created a world where people need to be exceptional just to be seen in the first place." She left Reed pondering this thought, knowing some translations changed more than just words. Where might your unrecognized talents be hiding in plain sight? If this story touched your heart, hit that like button right now. Do you know someone whose talents are being overlooked? Someone who deserves to be seen? Share this video with them and let them know their time will come. Don't miss our next powerful story. Subscribe to Beat Stories for more life-changing narratives that reveal the extraordinary in ordinary lives. Remember, every person you pass has hidden depths waiting to be discovered. What talents might you be overlooking today? Turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. New stories every Tuesday and Friday. Beat Stories, where every voice deserves to be heard.
You've seen the story. Now what will you do with it? At Beat Stories, we believe reflection is good, but action is better. Subscribe, share, speak, because awareness is only the first step.